Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Prue.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Brian Theis.
And we have got a hell of an album fight for you tonight. It is going to be a monster. We've got John Lennon, and then we have Paul McCartney going head-to-head. Our guest tonight is, in his third visit to the Break It Down Show, Dr. Tim Furnish. He, of course, was on episodes 108 and 62. We'll link those in the show notes. But, Brian, why don't you go ahead and get us on the topic of the night, John Lennon versus Paul McCartney.
All right, we've got ourselves into a real mess this time around. This album fight is Beatle versus Beatle. Band on the Run was released in 1973 and was the fifth album Paul had released since the end of the Beatles just 3 years prior, and his third album with Wings. It was recorded in Lagos, Nigeria under less than ideal circumstances as the drummer and lead guitarist left the band before going into the studio, leaving Paul and Linda McCartney along with Denny Lane to do all the work. On most of the tracks, Paul not only played the bass, he played the lead guitar and drums as well. Imagine was released in 1971 and is John Lennon's second post-Beatles album. It was recorded at Lennon's home studio Ascot Sound, the world-famous Abbey Road Studios, and New York City's record plant. Also, fully half of the 10 tracks feature Beatle buddy George Harrison sitting in on guitar. All right, I think we should throw it to Richard Lackie for his patent-pending pre-fight analysis.
Thanks, guys. And what do we have here? Well, we're going to have a little bit of a shorter pre-fight because what do I really need to do to hype up Lennon versus McCartney? I mean, come on. It's Lennon versus McCartney. It's a 1971 album from John Lennon, his solo album right after the Beatles split up, against Paul McCartney and Wings' Band on the Run from 1973. There you have it. There's our combatants. Need I say more? Not really. In the eternal debate of are you a John guy or are you a Paul guy? I'm a George guy. When it comes to the Beatles, I always love McCartney and Lennon together more than I like them separate. But let's look at this fight. It's an interesting one. Putting all the parameters together in the patent-pending analysis machine, it came out after 4 different variables, dead even. It was just back and forth. Paul this time, John that time, Paul this time, John that time. Then it got real interesting when we came up to critics' numbers. Everything up to this point was fairly close, or was a complete blowout. But as soon as one would have a blowout, the other one would have a blowout, and then there'd be something parameters that would be really close. But when it came down to the critics' parameters, boy, was it ever close. On a 5-point scale, the difference of the averages was only 0.05. 0.05 out of 5 total was the difference. So this album fight is going to be super close, I think. For Imagine, I would look at rounds 1, 3, and 6. For Band on the Run, I'd look at tracks 1, 2, and 10. There we go. We've got a common round. It comes out. Imagine versus Band on the Run. You don't get any better than that as far as album fights go. We'll see how the late rounds go for both albums. They kind of come out swinging. I think maybe Band on the Run might finish a little bit stronger. As far as a prediction, I think we'll probably have split votes with the judges. But I'm just going off the numbers here. Got to do it. Patent pending numbers system. And I think Band on the Run will win 6 rounds to 4. But I wouldn't be surprised if Imagine won either. But let's go with McCartney this time. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Richard. Any thoughts before the fight, Brian or Tim? Anything you guys want to say?
Yeah, well, let me just say that I am, in full disclosure, probably a George Harrison fan. And actually, I had never listened to all of Imagine, track by track. So this was the first time I'd done it. I think I learned some things.
Yeah, that's the idea, right? We all get a chance to enjoy these things, and it's been such a unique and learning experience for all of us. This is, I think, my 23rd album fight now. You can't help but pick up things through this format, so I appreciate that. Brian, any final thoughts before we kick this thing off?
No, I mean it's John versus Paul. It's going to be something special.
With that said, round one, Imagine versus Band on the Run. Let's just jump in right away with 2 feet. Tim, how did you see round one?
All right. Well, we have 2 great tunes here. Of course, the names of the album come from these songs, and vice versa. This was actually the only hit. Imagine was the only hit off the album for Lennon. It got to number 3 in the States. Band on the Run, of course, got to 1 for McCartney. Imagine's a great tune. I think the lyrics tend toward the banal hippie side of the equation. And, a brotherhood of man, I would say John Lennon's gone hippie, but he went hippie a long time ago. I wondered if this was John making up for dissing lefties way back in the song Revolution, remember?
Yeah.
So sometimes I think John was making up with this one. Band on the Run is, it's a very good song. It's kind of a strange mix. With a lot of this album, I tend to think that McCartney's music is better. A lot of the times Lennon's lyrics tend to be better, but not always, as we'll see. I don't know what the heck is what the heck is McCartney singing about? Band on the Run. Although I will say that All I Need Is a Pint a Day is one of the best songs in rock and roll history. And the album cover, okay, it's the title song for the album. So the album cover includes Saruman, Christopher Lee, and it includes, what's his name, the famous actor, but he has a mustache in this one, James Coburn with a mustache. All right. So I think you have to really take all of that into consideration. And I'm going to be a heretic here. I know that most of the planet loves the song Imagine. I keep hearing Bono talk about it on the U2 network. But I'm giving this one to Mac 10-9 because I think it's simply just a more uplifting and better song. Imagine is morose. Imagine is atheistic. And worst of all, a hippie anthem.
I love it. He comes out swinging hard. So what's your score then? Is it 10-9?
McCartney 10-9.
10-9. Brian,
Yes.
Follow that.
If I can follow that, I'm going to start off by saying that my all-time favorite movie is Cool Hand Luke. And in that movie, Luke escapes from prison 3 different times. Band on the Run is a song about running away, and it's broken into 3 different parts. You got the soft guitar and synth intro with the do-you. In that first minute, you think the song's going to head down a psychedelic rabbit hole. Then around a minute 20, you get a guitar and clap-driven, almost assembly line marching tune. And then around 2:05, the trumpets proclaim the entrance of the third act, and that's the folksy, poppy meat of the song. You can picture the hijinks as they make their escape. Imagine is an amazing song. It's timeless, it's beautiful, it's evocative. It was sung by the choir at my high school graduation 24 years ago, and that was 23 years after it was released. It's still the same song. Unfortunately, at least in my head, it's become overplayed. I hate what the phrase or the idea of triggered has become in today's society, but this is a trigger song for me. At work, we have a database called Imagine, and every time I click it, which is like several times a week, my head starts playing, Imagine all the people. That being said, I'm going to agree with Tim on this one and score at 10-9, Paul.
Well,
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and buck the trend here. Imagine is it's of the 2, it's the more important song. And especially of the last few decades of the 1900s, it's one that people, for whatever reason, latch on to, and it's got a strong social statement. Of course, I'm with you on this, Tim. I don't believe John Lennon. That's what's the problem. He's singing about not having possessions, and then there he is playing on a pearl white Steinway in his mansion, that only a guy like him could afford during the hard times of the 70s. So it's like, you want something bigger than what you're even willing to give up. And the song is provocative, and I don't think in necessarily a healthy way. If you're already on that side of things, you already believe it. And I know what John is capable of with his music and his lyrics. And I don't think he nails it here. For as great as this song is, it's a little, it makes people push away rather than have us all imagine things. And let's be honest, it's when people talk about utopia, they lose track of the fact that in Greek it's utopia or utopia. You don't know which one it is, and neither place exists. So it's, the song is problematic, but I didn't dig the 3 different structures that you talked about, Brian, and I had the exact same notes. 90 seconds and then 30 seconds later, and it kept changing. And I wish this song turned into a complete idea rather than a body of ideas. I think there's all kinds of great music in there. But because of the impact that Imagine has, even though it kind of aggravates me, I'm going to make this one 10-9 for Lennon. Round 2, Jet, which is an absolute fun hit, versus Crippled Inside. Brian, go ahead and take this round off.
All right. We'll start off with Crippled Inside. It's a dichotomy. It's a jangly, folk, upbeat sounding song about people hiding their true nature. Whether it's because of blatant hypocrisy or they're hiding something like depression or true emotions, it makes for a very intriguing song. Jet, the trend on this album, it defies lyrical interpretation. I don't know what he's singing about. And it's also got a very dated sound. When I hear this song, the picture that gets painted in my head is people roller skating down the beach in striped tube socks. I always appreciate the doses of saxophone, but in this sound, there's a growling sound that goes in the background throughout the whole song that I don't really care for. In the end, I wound up scoring this one 10-9 for John.
All right, for round two for me, and let me just say this: Tim made his big open announcement that he's a George guy. I'm probably a Paul guy more than anything else. I love the Beatles in general, but I definitely favor Paul. So, in all fairness, let me say that up front. Jet is just such a catchy, groovy song. It's what Paul does well. Is he just has the ability to put that hook in you and just will not let you go. And I was singing Jet. This was the song that stuck with me the most out of all of them. The lyrics, again, who the hell knows what he's talking about? But the song is so damn catchy, you just don't care. You know, given what Lennon brings in Crippled Inside, and look, here it's a ragtimey song with a tack piano and a dobro. I love those things as experimentations in their studio as you get to the place where the song needs to be. This song is, you know, we had a lot of this stuff when we had our U2 versus Simon and Garfunkel. They did a lot of these kind of sounds, so it's probably emblematic of that time, the early 70s, late 60s. But I don't need a bluesy, ragtimey Western song that does that. It's at least not going to win against Jet, which is just catchy as hell. So for me, this round is McCartney 10-9. Tim, how'd you have it?
I think I've heard Jet too damn many times over my 57 years of life. To the point where I turn it off if it comes on. And what is Max singing about? He has no bloody idea, you know? So if he doesn't, we don't. A chick named Jet? I mean, come on. What are you talking about, Paul? And what is the stuff about the Sergeant Major being a suffragette? Oh, for God's sake. Crippled Inside has George Harrison on the dobro. Now, I have to say, I'd only heard Crippled Inside a few times in my whole life, and I really sat here and listened to it, listened to the lyrics. And I actually like this song. I thought it was one of the better ones on the album because he cuts at McCartney, but it's not. It's a stiletto. It's not the broadsword that he uses in How Do You Sleep, which we'll get to in a bit, right? So I really appreciated that. You know, what is it? You can live a life until you die. Oh, little cut it, Live and Let Die, which is one of McCartney's best songs.
Yeah.
But basically, this song to me was like, it starts out like bourbon and it turns into, you know, wormwood and gall, which is something that I think that Lennon is quite good at. And I actually, probably again, partly because I've heard Jet too damn many times in my life, I scored this one 10-9 Lennon.
All right. All right. That's fantastic, Tim. This is great comment. You're perfect for this. Let's do round 3, Jealous Guy versus Bluebird. I don't often do this, but I'm really only going to talk about one of these songs. And this is just unfair. Bluebird's a beautiful song, but I'm just going to be honest. It's not on par with Jealous Guy. When one of these two great songsmiths gets it right, it's a good chance the other song's not going to stand up. And I just think Jealous Guy is just simply that. It's a great song with a better message. Bluebird is fine, and we'll hear the escape theme throughout. I mean, it goes to the title of the album and everything, but it's just not as good as Jealous Guy. This is a solid 10-9 win for Lennon. Go ahead and go, Tim. How did you have round 3?
Now, Jealous Guy is a really good song. One of the smartest things Lennon did was get that, what is the chap's name, Nicky Hopkins, to play keyboards for him.
Yeah.
That guy was just killer. So, look, I scored this one 10-9 Lennon too, because Bluebird is a beautiful, it's one of those beautiful vacuous songs that McCartney is a master of, okay? Yeah, you're a bluebird. Yeah, okay. I mean, the best part of that song is Howie Casey's sax solo, which is just awesome, all right? Just an awesome sax solo. Okay, but again, what are you talking about, Paul? Bluebird? I think you were scoring a little too much stuff in Legos, okay? Jealous Guy. Here's the thing about it that made me almost not give it to Lennon on this one, because it's just too much information, all right? It's TMI. And I don't know if you could listen to throw a little bit of Bono in here again. The latest U2 album, there's a song called The Showman, and which Bono says, the showman gives you a front row to his heart. The showman hopes his heartache will chart. And like, this is one of those ones where, okay, John, I really don't need your heartache. I mean, I know Rolling Stone loves it when you bare your soul, but I really get sick of it after a while. That said, it's still a better song than Bluebird, 10-9 Lennon.
And I want to say this too about John Lennon. He strikes me as a guy that likes to strike his lady. And, when you sing about your jealousy, I'm thinking, which one of you guys is the bigger asshole, you or John Denver? I don't think that's what he intends, but that's what I get from these songs.
That's what you get out of it, yeah.
Yeah, he's done so much beating that he's got to write her a beautiful song. And I hate to put him in that box, but unfortunately I believe that he's in it. So sorry for taking up your time, Brian. Why don't you go ahead and give
No problem. I don't have much to say. I think Bluebird is a very sweet song. I love the various percussive effects they use and the sax solo. I mean, Tim already said it. The sax solo stands out. But the repetition of just Bluebird, 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 it gets stale after quickly. Jealous Guy, like we said, it's a very sweet song. I love the way the keys play around with just the vocals and then the bass and other elements come in. I read somewhere that this song's been covered like a bajillion times. I can see why. It's just that kind of a song. And I wound up scoring it 10-9 for John.
All right. That brings us to round 4. Tim, you're going to kick us off. Mrs. Vanderbilt versus It's So Hard.
Okay, first confession. For the first time in my life, I found out this was not Mrs. Vanderbilt.
Me too.
Yeah. Like, it's Vanderbilt. Is there a typo? No, it's Vanderbilt. Okay. Anyway, I love the song Mrs. Vanderbilt. I did it. Okay, I did it again. Mrs. Vanderbilt. Okay. It's great acoustic guitar work. I love that ho hey ho thing.
Yeah.
Howie Sachs has another great. Howie Casey has another solo on this. Again, we have this thing where McCartney, as you said, Brian, he plays bass and he plays drums, he plays guitar. I mean, is there an instrument this guy can't play? They're clever lyrics. Again, they don't mean a whole lot. They're probably a little deeper than Bluebird, but that's not saying much, is it? But on the other hand, it's up against It's So Hard, which sounds like a horny 8th grader wrote it, okay? Come on, John. The double entendres are just pathetic. It's so hard, really hard. Like, did you graduate from high school, John? This is just too much information, okay? Certain people may like that, that cutting edge bluntness, and I think it's just, juvenile. So I give this one to Mac 10-9.
Brian, how did you have round 4?
I really liked It So Hard. I think it's a good, grimy, just a Roadhouse blues song with a nice driving sound. And I wasn't expecting it at this point in the album, and I think it's a good departure of what he's done so far. As far as Mrs. Vanderbilt, I really like the bass line and the saxophone. Again, I'm going to say that a bunch tonight. And I love the guitar bridging in between the hey-oh heys and the what's the use about halfway through. But in the end, the ho hey ho's just got too repetitive, and I wish there was more to the song. And I scored this one 10-9 for Lennon.
All right, and then my analysis for round 4, basically exact same thing, Tim. I continue to try to not say Mrs. Vanderbilt. So, and then also I wanted to say Ms. Vanderbilt because I felt like it's a more modern term. But Mrs. Vanderbilt, you hear a lot of the Beatles, because these guys had just left this band. Even though Paul had done a bunch of writing, it wasn't necessarily all good. So he comes out and he's writing. He's still got George's guitar playing in his head as he does this thing. But you also hear some 80s McCartney in there too, so he is evolving. And I think this song is a good model of who he was, who he's about to become. And of course that ho hey ho groove is just fantastic. And what we learned from Allie Willis when she was on her episode, you don't need the words to make sense at the expense of the groove, and nobody's greater at that than Paul McCartney. He does what he does well. Hey, and that bass line is super Paul, but super perfect, and it's catchy. And though this song is closer to filler than I'm comfortable with on this album, and I think it's songs like this that are more common on these two albums, and that's what keeps them from being special. But it's a pretty good song. It's So Hard. The best thing about this song is it's short. I've heard John Lennon do this 10 years earlier, and it's not fair, but in this format, I don't need a song that's essentially a cover without being a cover of a blues song. I'll take the catchier Mrs. Mrs. Vanderbilt. I had to slow down to say that right. Over rehashed blues.
It's in our head, Pete.
I know it is. It's rehashed blues, and neither song gets there all the way, but I will give Paul McCartney the nod. 10-9, round 4. All right. We're going really fast through this, so I wanted to take a moment and just see where your guys' heads are at. We've had one unanimous round across all of the judges on the CompuBox numbers and everything. One round. Actually, that's not even true. We have not had a round yet that's unanimous. What does that tell you guys about what we're seeing in these albums?
These are 2 damn good albums.
Yeah. We're sitting here trying to find fault rather than praise greatness, because they're both great. And it's the picking of nits, and Tim picks at different nits than I do, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. Round 5. I Don't Want to Be a Soldier Mama versus Let Me Roll It. Go ahead and kick us off this round, Brian.
All right. I think Let Me Roll It is a good adjustment at this point of the album by Paul. I love the bluesy guitar right out in front, but the bass and really the organ stand out in moving the song along so smoothly, and Paul's vocals just growl on this one. I really like that. I Don't Want to Be a Soldier Mama, I think is a great use of sounds. I love the way the guitar, the piano, and the saxophone all stand out. Lyrically, I think there's only 25 unique words in this song, and it manages to tell a pretty powerful story. A couple of good sounding songs, and it's a close round, but I gave this one 10-9 from McCartney.
All right, well, here's how I break down round 5. I Don't Want to Be a Soldier Mama. I just don't know. I don't buy it. I don't buy John's words in this song. I expect a lot of John Lennon, and if you're going to write this song, I expect you to do something that not only escapes time, but also says something. This guy has such a powerful ability to string words together. Why did he let us down with repetitive things? I don't need 500 words, but I need something more from this. And I know Tim's a former service member, but I know me as a former service member, I take a little bit of offense to this song. Granted, in the time, it's a different song, but I don't know that serving your country is such a negative thing, and it certainly isn't that way now. So the music is fine, but it's just not a great tune, and I don't think the song would be as well received today, which isn't necessarily fair, but then again, he's John Lennon, and I'm positive he can take it. Let Me Roll It. Whether intentional or not, this is a really good John Lennon song, but Paul McCartney delivers as always. And each of these two acts are moving past the old, and there's still plenty of each other in their songs. So I understand why Paul brings a lot of John into this song, even if it's subconscious, just because that's what they've done their whole careers. And so I like what he's doing. I like the fact that he switched styles halfway through the fight to go, let me show you how John Lennon writes a song, and does it. And on that fact alone, I think this is a 10-9 McCartney round. Tim, what did you do?
I couldn't find the tune in "I Don't Want to Be a Soldier." I couldn't find the melody. Even with the Harrison playing slide guitar again, I don't know. And I, like you, Pete, I try to go, well, okay, it's 1971, and it's a different world. Vietnam's at its height or depth, however you want to see it. And so I tried to look at it that way, but I didn't think the music was particularly good. And it's just John. It's not even that he just has repetitive lyrics. It's like he can't pick a lane. I don't want to be rich or poor. Well, come on. Well, I want to be middle class. I mean, come on, John. The sax and the drums are good in this song, but he does. And we're starting to get a lot of that echoey Lennon voice vocal thing on this album at this point, and I kind of get tired of that. And I didn't find these particularly deep lyrics. I just thought they were sort of repetitively petulant. That's the way I saw them. Yeah. Let Me Roll It is one of my favorite songs by Paul. He's sort of like halfway tried with the lyrics on this one. I don't know, maybe Linda wrote it, who knows. And that fight between him, who started the fight between him and John? I mean, supposedly it went back to Ram, and then of course Imagine, and then Paul now with Let Me Roll It, and sort of supposed to be a delayed response to How Do You Sleep, which we'll get to here in a bit. But I looked up where Paul says, I hadn't realized I'd sung it like John. Oh, come on, I don't believe that for a second. You knew exactly what you were doing. And as you said, I think, Brian, you did a damn good job of singing it like John. Yeah. This is my favorite McCartney songs. I scored this one 10-8 McCartney.
Oh, wow, a knockdown. Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he did use his own style against him. It's like he took his fist and punched John in the face with his own fist,
Yes.
I love it. That's cracking me up. All right, let's do round 6. Mamunia versus Give Me Some Truth. So Paul, again, he's continuing to sing about his evolution, and he's using, Paul learned an Arabic word. So he goes
and
to town
repeats
with
it a lot.
What's that?
And repeated it a lot.
A lot. Yeah. No, he definitely did. I'm curious what you'll have to say about that, Tim. But,
Right.
He's singing about his escape, and the bass line, like Let Me Roll, is super simple. So Paul's not working hard here. So I think he's making the best of the players he's got in his studio, and he's a world-class player in anything he touches. But there is something to be said for not having to do all of that work yourself, because you get a little singular in your approach. And let's be honest, Linda's great. I love that he's making an album with his wife. John did the same thing, but we're not going to get the best when John doesn't have better people in him. And, a lot of people play drums better than Paul. It's just a fact. And it's a shame that he doesn't have that in there, because I think this song suffers from that. And we see what happens. And it happened with Stevie Wonder last week in the Stevie fight. When you are left alone and you've reached that point where you can do it all yourself, it doesn't mean that you're better that way. And I think that this song suffers from that. Give Me Some Truth. Finally, John wakes up and is doing something with what he's got. He strings together words in a way that shows that he's actually able to put some life into this album. This is a second-rate Beatles song, though. This wouldn't have made the cut on one of the earlier albums just a couple years before. Of course, you have to mention George's playing. It's always there, and he delivers that style that he delivers. This song, for me, as a teacher, this would be a solid B. Is that enough? I think in this song, I think this matchup, John Lennon beats him by a very slim 10-9 margin, and sets himself up pretty nicely for the second half of the fight. What do you think, Tim?
Mamoonia. Oh, sorry. That's Acoustic Candy. Mamoonia is a lovely little tune, but it's candy, and the lyrics are, what's lighter than candy? I don't know, fluff of some kind.
Cotton candy.
Yeah, cotton candy. Thank you. I mean, damn you, now I can't get Mamoonia out of my head after listening to that. I've been doing it for the next week. But McCartney has that gift, and sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it's less than good. This time it's less than good. Give Me Some Truth sounded like it was just written for Trump to show up in London. What's the line? Short-haired, yellow-bellied son of Tricky Dicky. If they just changed it to short-bellied, yellow-haired son of Tricky Dicky, then it would have been perfect for Trump's visit in that balloon that they had over London.
Right.
I know Rolling Stone eats this stuff up whenever they review Lennon albums or songs, because they worship him as the fourth member of the Trinity. Harrison's guitar work I thought was particularly good on this song. I really liked it. And it really doesn't take a whole heck of a lot to top Mamoonia. So I'll give this to John 10-9.
Brian, are you going to keep the trend going? Are we not liking Mamoonia?
I'm afraid so, yeah. Mamoonia in Arabic, it means safe haven, and it's also the name of a house in Lagos where the album was recorded. I think, the song, it tries to use rain to bring about a renewal or a making of new life, and I think that's kind of a metaphor for what they're going through there, with half the band quitting and having to make something out of nothing. I like the way that the strings make knowing the song's about rain and hearing the strings almost sound like rainfall to me. I appreciate that element. Give Me Some Truth. It's an angry song, and I love hearing John and George playing the guitars together, and I like the way the drums fit in. The lyrics are dated, but anyone who's had high school history knows what he's talking about. Nixon in the Vietnam era. It's been covered well. I haven't heard a Trump cover of it yet, but I have heard Pearl Jam covering it for G.W. Bush. This was a close round. Neither of these songs are particularly stellar, but I gave it 10-9 to John.
All right. As we enter the last section of the fight, and I know that either of these guys can go and rip off 4 songs without revealing anything. What are your guys' thoughts now? Like, now that we're through the middle rounds, we're about to get into the late rounds. What are you sensing, Tim?
About where this is going?
About where it's going, what you've seen so far. What are your thoughts up to this point?
Well, not to sound trite and conventional, spouting conventional wisdom, but I mean, of course, what's the reputation they both had? I mean, up till the time that John was tragically killed, was that McCartney wrote often. That I think, maybe don't want to overstate it, but McCartney wrote better music, but John wrote deeper songs. And I think to a certain extent that was kind of the rap on them both in the Beatles too, wasn't it? And George was sort of off there somewhere else burning incense because they wouldn't let him do anything, and who knows what Ringo was doing except playing damn good drums. And I think we're seeing a lot of this here still. I mean, this was 71 was Imagine, so it was only a year after the Beatles had broken up, and then the other ones Men on the Run 73. So as I think, Brian, you said a few minutes ago, or maybe Pete, I can't remember who said it, there's still a heavy Beatles. It's like they still haven't quite broken away from what they were doing with the Beatles at this point.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, Brian?
I got to echo what Tim was saying. Coming into this fight, it had been drilled into my head that Lennon was the better lyricist, but McCartney was the better musician. He made songs sound better, and that's, so far, at least to me, that's rang true with McCartney songs, the lyrics being somewhat between gibberish and just complete repetitiveness.
Yeah, Paul is not bound to literal lyrics in any way, sense or form. He'll use a word like suffragette because he thinks it fits, and the meaning, be damned. And I think he's been asked, as maybe the greatest songwriter of all time. He's probably been asked, what the fuck does that mean, more than any other songwriter. And I guess I should, at this point, just do the standard disclaimer. And this is what we do. Look, we love these albums. We love these artists. We want to have these conversations with friends. We want you guys to enjoy it. I know I completely enjoyed listening to these albums, and I don't know that I listened to both of them all the way through, and I may never do it again. So I know I'm speaking for Brian and for Tim. We love this stuff. Yes, we're being critical, but we're doing so because that's the format, and we are talking about things that we love. It's okay to look at a wonderful piece of art and say, I wish this stroke was yellow, or I wish this song, and these guys didn't know we were going to collide their albums together like this. They had no idea. So, yes, it's hokey, but it's a lot of fun, and we're all having a good time with it. So we hope you guys all do too. Now that I have said that, let's get into round 7, Oh My Love versus No Words. And leading us off this time is Tim.
Oh My Love, again, one of the better parts of this is Harrison on guitar. Did I mention I was a George fan? I think I mentioned. Again, more of that echoey John vocal stuff going on, which I just think he relies on too much. It's a nice little tune. I think the lyrics are vapid as hell. I was wondering, actually, did he actually ask Paul to write the lyrics for this song? I don't know. It's kind of thing sounds like Mac would write the words for. But then I thought, well, that's what happens when you co-write a song with Yoko. So there you go. No Words. It's a nice little tune. I wondered, however, it was about an STD. Your burning love, sweet burning love. It's deep inside. But that would be a John tune, not a Paul tune. And if anything, it's actually more vapid than Oh My Love. It starts to just, toward the end, it starts to rock out a little bit. Then it just abruptly goes away. I honestly don't really like that much either of these songs. And I made this a tie at 10-10.
Wow. Almost in effect a double knockdown.
It's like the second Rocky movie. They both go down except nobody got up. So
yeah. It's a double knockdown, which in our system it's got to be 10-10, so that I can appreciate that. Brian, go ahead and do your round 7 analysis.
The songwriting credit on No Words goes to Denny Lane, but I've seen quite a few interpretations thinking that this is almost an apologetic love song to John Lennon. Whatever it is, it's a pretty song. It's a good radio length single, and it's got some nice guitar and some orchestral touches that I appreciate. Oh My Love, it's a nice, tender song, and I like George's sweet sounding guitar to go along with the keys and cymbals. It's a sweet song, but it's wholly unremarkable. This was a close round, but I wound up giving it to Paul 10-9.
I had Oh My Love. This is a good song, and I think it might be great, John being self-reflective. And I wish desperately that he had more confidence in the vulnerability of his voice, especially in this track, to let it stand out more and not be doubled, like you said, Tim. I don't think that serves this song well, and I would hope that if he was still around, he would perform this song differently. I like the subtlety of the piano and the very light doubling that they have on the keyboards and the instrumentation. I think that this song had a lot of potential to be something really special, and it's a shame that he didn't get the next 40 years to figure it out. But either way, I say bravo, Maestro. This is what John can do when he doesn't even quite get it right, and it's still an excellent song. It's this song also wasn't officially released, but this is a Beatles era song. This was written in that time, and good luck trying to have that conversation when Yoko writes a song and you bring it into the Beatles, band room. Like that just ain't gonna happen. So he had to eat the song until he was free and clear of the band to put it up. By the way, no words. This is more post Beatles fare where you have the classic Paul bass line and how does it compare to All My Love? It's two love songs. I think Paul's version is nice, but I think John gets to a better place with his words. Again, John's words beating out Paul's tune. I don't think this song is stronger melodically for Paul either. I might really think about it. This for me is an easy 10-9 for Lennon.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
All right, let's go round 8. Helen Wheels versus oh boy, here we go. Here comes the broadsword, Tim. How do you sleep? All right, let's have Brian lead
How
off.
do you sleep? This is the fight right here. How do you sleep? It's another angry song, and this is an album fight. And right now, he's punching right at his opponent. I think the piano and the vocals in this song take on a mocking tone. But the drums and guitar bring that good rock sound. I've seen John say that this song was just in good, clean fun, but it really sounds like he's bitter. Mm-hmm. Helen Wheels, for me, it's a fun song. I like the way it kicks right in and drives along with the guitars and drums, but and maybe it's just me, maybe with my headphones, but there was something in the vocal mix that really bothered me and actually hurt my ears in a couple points. I wound up giving this one a 10-9 for Angry John.
Angry John. I love Helen Wheels. This is what I think Paul does great. And granted, this song isn't perfect, but if Land Rover never bought the rights to the song and used it for commercials, they're crazy. Their marketing people missed an absolute opportunity. They should pay any amount of money to use the song because John is clearly the greatest jingle writer for commercials that has ever lived. He is incredible at it. Solid tune. It's fun. I love to play this song on road trips. And it's always going to be catchy. It's got some of that goofy instrumentation that Paul loves to do, but whatever. I can forgive that. How do you sleep? Well, let's just say this. Look, we've seen this technique done before where you come after your mate and you blast away. And let's just be honest. If Eminem did this to Paul McCartney, it would be game over. Eminem is lethal. If Tupac had done hit him up about Paul McCartney, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And when you compare those classic diss songs against this is a joke, and it's petty, and it goes against the whole hippie John Lennon thing. I get it. You're upset about the whole business arrangement and Paul's winning, and you were salty about it. But look at this lyric. A pretty face may last a year or two, but pretty soon they'll see what you can do. Okay, well, I guess we did see what Paul could do. He could continue to write hits for the next 30 years. The sound you make is music to my ears. Again, that's just wrong. And it's one thing to say something that is true, but what Paul writes isn't music. It's people love it. People adore his music, and if you're petty enough to put that in there, then I have no time for that. So, and then his last line of that sonnet right there, that little piece is, "You must have learned something in all those years," as if Paul hasn't contributed mightily to John's success. They got there together. They were wonderful. When you only have so many songs left in your life and you never know how many songs there are, why write this? Why not write something that actually matters and do something that pushes people? So shame on John for wasting his talent on something as petty as this, and I will call this a 10-9 round for Paul, and only because I respect John's overall contribution to music. Otherwise, this would be a knockdown round for me. Tim, what did you think?
I had same score, 10-9 Mac. Helen Wheels is one of my favorite songs. I love to turn this on and drive when I'm driving anywhere. It's a driving song, like you said. It's about Land Rover. It talks about Glasgow and Liverpool and Carlisle and Birmingham. Although I've driven in England and got a ticket in York last time I was there. Still, I can appreciate the song. And I just love it. I love the guitar in this song. It's one of those songs that I guess it's kind of lightweight, but it strikes me as sort of a road song, and I really like it. How Do You Sleep? You just nailed it, Pete. It's just bitter. It's just bitter and angry. It sounds like, you run into someone at the bar that's divorced and they've had too much to drink and they're just spewing vitriol about their ex. And it really is kind of beneath John, but he just laid it out there. You know what really struck me about this was, since George also played on this one, I wonder what George was thinking. Was he thinking, karma's a bitch, and these two guys that wouldn't let me, that didn't like my songs, are now at each other's throat? Or I like to think George was a little bigger than that and going, this is a shame, but still he played guitar on the song. So he was sort of helping John with this. But overall, that song it sort of depresses me. And Helen Wheels, I think, is just a fun, really good rock song. And so I scored this 10-9 for McCartney.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. We don't really think that John nailed his diss track. So, yeah. And I saw some video where George is in the room and John's really selling the whole, this is really going to be a zinger kind of thing. And George pretty much is just trying to grab his guitar and play. And even if he agrees, I think he's got better things to worry about. So I think your favorite Beatle gets a bit of a pass. And
I also read an account where Ringo finally said something like, John, this is enough, or this is too much, or even Ringo was very put off by it.
Yeah. Well, it's not very peace and love. You guys all have a ton of money, and you dissolving that relationship is not going to be easy, and you're going to get mad, but that's on John, to get over that and hire a better lawyer or whatever. Dissolving that relationship is never going to be simple. So anyhow, let's go on to round 9, How versus Drink to Me. And I guess this is mine to start off, so I'll say How as a question mark. This song is a question mark to me. It misses me. I'm not sure why I'm getting it wrong, but what Lennon delivers to me is more self-reflective uncertainty and weakness from this. And I'm sure he's lost in this time of his career trying to figure out what to do. I mean, he was the guy that pulled them off the road for the most part. You've got a guy that's just not comfortable being John Lennon. And I don't know, again, we go back to How Do You Sleep, and these are the last songs you ever play. He's got, I don't know how many tracks left in him, but it's not 50. So he's only got so many songs, and he comes up with this. And this is a guy that maybe needed to sit down and figure out what it was he was trying to say and speak from a position of get out. When he was great in the Beatles, he was out in front of us showing us things. And now he's just a not quite middle-aged man. Maybe for the time he's middle-aged, but he's just a dude that's trying to figure it out, and it doesn't come across very capably or very well. So it's an incomplete work, and I wish he had more time to work on that. Whereas Drink to Me has a great story, and I get to go first, so I'm going to tell the story. But basically, McCartney's on an island, and they're filming Papillon with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. So he's like, I'm going to go how cool is that to be able to, and this is Steve McQueen and Hoffman in the early 70s at these guys' peak. These guys are, no Towering Inferno yet. None of the other nonsense that those guys made later. This is a great time for Paul McCartney to walk up. And then of those three, which one's the most like agog? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm looking at fill in the blank, all three of them. And so there's the bet that Dustin Hoffman says to McCartney, you can't write a song about anything. And they basically point to a headline about the death of Picasso. And, Hoffman's like, I'll be damned, he's doing it. And he writes a song basically on the spot. And does a little extra work too, the 70s album format where there's some codas and reprises from the earlier parts of the album as Paul is closing things up. And here's what for me really takes this album to a new place is you've got Ginger Baker on there doing percussion, and that guy only had so many good percussion moments left, but he really does a great job in this track and really takes it somewhere because it's not just Paul in the room, and I like that. So when Paul is doing these things, he's being creative outside of his jingle box, I think that's when Paul really gets special. Yeah, of course, there's more silly Paul songs and everything else in there, but either way, this is a convincing 10-9 for Paul from me. How did you have this one, Tim?
Well, gentlemen, I hate to weenie out on you again, but I scored this one as my second tie of the group, 10-10, because I really want to like Picasso's last words. And the story that you talked about, I'd read that too, which I thought was just fascinating. And especially, with the French winning the World Cup today and all that muttering in French, I really wanted to like it more. And I think I used to like it more in the past, but when I listened to it, I just didn't think the working Jet into it in the reprise of Mrs. Vanderbilt. Did I get it right this time? I just didn't really think it worked that well. And it's just killer that the man, like you said, could write a song on a bet and then get it, of course, recorded. But, the man's a musical genius. But I just didn't think it worked that well. And they should let Ginger Baker do some more. Or, maybe found Clapton or something. It's a cool story, and I think it's an interesting concept, but I don't think it particularly works that well. On the other hand, we have How, where, again, it's just John playing the victim. And, I understand what you're saying, and maybe I'm not being as charitable as I should be to a deceased man, but I just kind of get tired of him playing the victim. I mean, like, come on, John, for God's sake. I don't really think you were that much of a victim. Life can be long, and you just got to be strong. I mean, did you just crack a fortune cookie open and then write that down? And I didn't think the tune was particularly that impressive. So of these two, I just really don't think either of them are even close to the standard that these men are capable of. I didn't think one was particularly better than the other one. So I had this one as a tie at 10-10.
Brian, what about you? How did you have it?
Yeah, I was going to mention there's a story that you went into about Dustin Hoffman and Paul McCartney and Pablo Picasso. I think this song, it can be just a great conglomeration of badassery. You got one badass that challenges another, and he writes a song paying tribute to a third badass. And the beginning of the song, I think, is great. But when he starts bringing in the reprises from Mrs. Vanderbilt and Jet, it just becomes a goof. I think the first part of the song can stand alone is great, but after that, it just becomes something that he's playing around with, and it kind of it's a contemplative song. It's a slow John Lennon song. He's lost and looking for direction, but unlike Picasso's last words, he winds up staying true to himself. So I wound up scoring this one 10-9 for John. Yeah,
well, interesting. And again, I'll go back to the scorecard as I look, and we'll get breaking down the scorecard here in a minute. But we as a group of judges with our unofficial judges and everything else, we have one round in this entire fight where we all agree, and that was Let Me Roll It versus I Don't Want to Be a Soldier. Every other round we've had at least one person go against the consensus. So it's
somebody picked Mamunia.
someone picked Mamunia, and that someone was Phil Green, who's an official judge in a lot of fights. And so, yeah, it's interesting to see that. So let's get into round 10. I'm going to go ahead and have you lead off, Brian, because we're going to have Tim close it out. But 1985 versus Oh Yoko. And what do you think?
A lot of Beatles fans cringe when Yoko was mentioned, and I'm not immune to that reaction. So in order to properly judge this fight, I actually took Yoko as I was listening to it, and I replaced it with Christine, which is my wife's name. When I listened to it that way, it became a really tender love song that I can relate to. I like the way that the keys and the harmonica.
I did the same thing, but with Tim's name.
Oh, well, whatever works for you, Pete. 1985, I think it provides a great bookend to the titular opening track. They're still running in the piano. It gives that sense of pursuit, and the rest of the sounds add to the climax, which, unlike the last song, it brings us back into a well-placed reprise of the opener. I think the lyrics are gibberish, but the music is genius. And for that, and because Oh Yoko is about Yoko and not Christine, I scored this one at 10-9 for Paul.
All right. Well, so I had 1985 similarly. I dig how the synthesizer kind of predicts the 1985 sounds. What a surprise. And we're about 12 years ahead of that. So I really was struck by how forward-thinking Paul's music can be, and whether that was an accident or on purpose. I give him credit for it because he nailed that. I like the coda to get us back to the beginning, enabling someone to flip the record over and just listen to it again. I think that's clever album craft, and it goes to something that we don't get anymore, is how do you put these songs together, and how do you orchestrate multiple tracks into a piece of work. So not a monster finish, but I think it's enough because, Look, I can't blame a guy for throwing a love song at his lady, especially when she's on the album. And clearly, she's a major piece of his life, especially right now. He's certainly capable of throwing together a great love song. And now every Yoko in the world says, yes, there's a song written about me. And I think that's cool. But if I was going to put my teacher hat on again, I would give this song a very generous B+ from an A+ student. So I don't think this is his best work. And when I think about if I'm going to write a song for my wife and I'm John Lennon, I'm not going to put this out. It's juvenile. That's the problem. It's cute. It's fun, but it's just not enough. 10-9 McCartney. Tim, close us out for round 10.
Well, the best thing about Oh Yoko is at least he wasn't singing about bringing her a single plum floating in perfume in a man's hat. That's from the B Sharps episode of The Simpsons, if you don't know.
My God. That's funny.
Yeah, when Barney went full Lennon and had a Japanese girlfriend. So let's see. Some of the lyrics of the song. In the middle of the bath, I call your name. In the middle of the shave, I call your name. I mean, what other... At least we didn't get the full bathroom panoply thrown at us when he thinks about Yoko. Thank you, John, for that. The best thing about this song is the piano part. I mean, again, the piano player is just awesome. But this is another example, and I'm sorry I can't be as charitable as you, Brian. I had yoke overload at this point. Okay. And then in that horrible, it was actually not a bad song till we had that annoying harmonica in the end, which sounded like someone had, shot Bob Dylan full of uppers. So that I just, 1985 and not 1985. Pete.
I know. I was being lazy.
I'm old enough to remember that song was about the future, which I thought was really cool when I was in high school. I love this song. It's got a great piano part. McCartney's bass. I mean, McCartney, is there a greater bass player in the rock world than McCartney? I don't think there is. Now the lyrics are not exactly George Orwell. Okay, it's not a George Orwell novel. I just can't get enough of that sweet stuff. My little lady gets behind. Oh, little double entendre there. Thank you, Paul. Very sort of John-esque double entendre. Again, the bass playing, I love it when it gets really sort of symphonic at the end. I love it. And then, as you said, when it goes into the reprise of the title track, I mean, this is exactly what they did on Sgt. Pepper, right? Yeah. So I think I love this song, and I think it's a great end of the album. I'm scoring it 10-9, Paul.
All right. Well, there we have it. So if you haven't scored at home, let me go ahead and break the fight down for you. We have a split decision. Tim and I have this thing going towards Paul McCartney. I have it 96-94. Tim has it 97-94 with his knockdown round, but also 2 tie rounds where he just couldn't decide who was worse. And then Brian has it 96-94. The thing to point out there is that there is a very slim difference between these two great albums. And then when you have our other official judges, and Richard's numbers won't be in until later, but we have continuation with the split. Michael Perry has it 95-94, and Phil has it 96-94, but going in opposite directions. So John Lennon for Mike, and Phil has it for Paul McCartney. And by the way, Phil liked Oh Yoko, so we're going to question Phil's good taste. And
Phil must read too much Rolling Stone, is all I can.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you guys, honestly, when Rolling Stone makes Imagine one of the 80 greatest albums of all time, can you take that seriously?
I don't think you can, because I mean, look, I used to read Rolling Stone regularly before it turned into agitprop for the far left. I used to read it regularly, and it was, again, just overboard with adulation of Lennon. I just thought it was ridiculous. A lot of it was simply because of his political stances, and I don't think you can take that seriously.
What about you, Brian? Do you buy that this is one of the top 80 albums ever?
No, I don't agree with that at all. The whole Rolling Stone top 500 albums of all time, I bought it off the rack. I study it. I look through it. I read through it. I like the reviews, but I disagree greatly with most of it. I think there's 3 or 4 Beatles albums in the top 7.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Revolver. I like Rubber Soul. I just Exile on Main Street is my all-time favorite album, and it's number 7. So I just take it.
Isn't Sgt. Pepper number 1?
Sgt. Pepper's number 1, yeah.
And I don't even think Sgt. Pepper's the best Beatles album.
What album do you think is the best Beatles album, Tim?
I'd have to toss a coin between Abbey Road and White Album.
And I think you're fair in saying that. I would pick Abbey Road, but I have no problem saying White Album. And let me just point this out. Albums that are at 150, right around that range, Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy, which I'm glad to put up against Imagine any day of the week, and I'm going to gather that the songcraft A to Z is going to be better on Houses of the Holy. Steely Dan's Asia, I'm sorry, that's just better than that. And even NWA Straight Outta Compton. You want to talk about political statement and power and getting the message across, NWA is going to wipe the floor with Imagine. So, yeah, I don't know that album is going to stand up to the test of time because it's not that special. It's great. John Lennon's great, but I don't think we got great John Lennon on this album.
I think Double Fantasy was frankly better.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's room. And this is also partly, I think, and Tim, what do you think about this? The pace of songwriters and record companies of the 60s and 70s, like they're just cranking out. A better love song with the harmonica is Love Me Do, and that's 10 years prior. Look how many songs are in between Love Me Do and Oh Yoko. It's shocking that they put out that much stuff, and surprisingly, a lot of it's really good, but I just don't think John Lennon got there often enough in this album. When I look at scoring Paul McCartney above it, I'm really comfortable with that because I think Paul had a stronger command, and though he did a lot of it himself on this album, I think he just top to bottom outperformed John Lennon. What do you think, Brian?
Obviously, I scored this album for Lennon. McCartney's lyrics bothered me more than maybe I should have let them. But no, I agree with you. You're looking at the Rolling Stone. I don't have it in front of me. It's actually upstairs.
Gentlemen, let me tell you this. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but I happen to think McCartney's best album is Tug of War.
Oh, Tug of War is great. I love Tug of War. It's really, he does the political thing and does it well, especially for the time. No, Tug of War is a great album. All right, let's get Richard's post-fight. Richard, how did you see our analysis?
Well, the patent-pending analytical tool said this was going to be a close one, and wow, it was a close one. We predicted 6 rounds to 4. We also predicted probably a split between the judges, and we got pretty much that. With the official cards, Band on the Run got 95.67 average score. Imagine got a 94.67 average score. So that's a difference of 1 point. Out of 100, you're looking at a 1% difference between the two albums. So we kind of called that. If you add in the unofficial cards, it skews a little bit more for Band on the Run, with a 95.43 for Band on the Run and a 93.86 for Imagine. So just slightly changed, but overall we've got about a 96 to a 94, 95, which is what was predicted by the numbers. So I'm really happy with that. We talked about rounds that were going to be important for each album. Imagine it was rounds 1, 3, and 6. For Band on the Run, it was tracks 1, 2, and 10. There's, if you notice, one common track. Imagine got 7 out of 9, so even though it did not win, it did do very well in its expected rounds. Band on the Run, very close, got 6 out of 9. The difference in what it looks like is Imagine had 1 knockdown, where Band on the Run had 0. Both albums had 2 rounds each that were unanimous in their favor. Again, we say it all the time, this was a super, super close match and well-deserved for both albums. I can't see an argument one way or the other. I had a very hard time with some of these rounds. I scored at 96 to 94. No, I was not trying to hit the numbers. I really thought for a moment that John Lennon was going to win. Then I feel like Imagine kind of petered out a little bit towards the end. I really liked a lot of what Band on the Run had to offer towards the end of the album. And also the middle round seemed to be where Band on the Run kind of took off. This was a good fight. When it's Lennon and McCartney, it's going to be a good fight. So I don't think there's any surprises there. Not sure what's next week. Can't wait for it. Looking forward to it. We've had 3 great weeks of albums here in the last 3 weeks, and only looking forward to some more exciting album fights. Back to you guys.
Well, there you go. Like Richard said, it was a close fight. So it's It's always a pleasure to do these things. By the way, Janis Joplin Pearl is rated significantly lower than Imagine, and I would put Pearl against Imagine any day of the week. I don't know that Imagine would be able to stand up. We'll have to put Imagine in the ring against something else that's rated below it at some point. It's fantastic having you guys on. Tim, anytime you want to do this, if you want to build another album fight, you get what we're doing here. You know, the point is to have these conversations with different people. Just enjoy it. Thank you, Brian, for all your work and taking on the burden of being an official judge with me and everything. I appreciate that. I know it's a lot of work, and I don't take it lightly.
No problem.
And thank you for the invitation, guys. This is great. This is a blast.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And look at this.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be fun. And we're coming right up on an hour. So we whipped through it pretty quick, and I really appreciate you guys. Any final words, Brian?
Yeah, get me on when we do a George album sometime.
All right, we'll get a George album going. All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming on, and we will talk to you next time.